Hey, I'm Zane Gonzalez. You're watching the Harris Highlight Show.
Na 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 na.
Coming to you live from downtown Phoenix, this is Season 2, Episode 5 of the Harris Highlight Show. Joining me this week are college football analyst Josh Schaefer and Lyle Goldstein, and our executive producer Brady Klein, and I'm your host for the evening, Blake Harris. Now, gentlemen, how are we on this fine Sunday evening?
I'm doing all right, Blake. What about you?
Oh, we got a beautiful setup here. I'm loving it. How are you guys today?
State-of-the-art facility. I couldn't be happier. College football is amazing, but not as amazing as today's setup.
All right, now guys, before we get started, this week's episode is sponsored by SeatGeek. Head on over to SeatGeek.com and enter promo code Harris Highlights and you'll receive $20 off your first order. We've already had a bunch of people getting the discounts. Josh, his parents, his girlfriend. We've had some viewers, my parents. So Lyle and Brady, I think your parents are next in line. So make sure you tell them to watch the show or go get that discount. And also, guys, we are doing a giveaway. We have partnered with Pro Football Focus. Pro Football Focus goes in-depth and gives you NFL player grades and position ranks. Now, if you watch Sunday Night Football, you see those little rankings underneath the names. That is Pro Football Focus. They also have tons of NFL draft coverage. On top of that, they put out lots of great articles as well. Their analysts spend over 50 hours a game generating 140 plus data points on every single play, and we are going to be giving out a free subscription. All you got to do is head on over to Twitter, send me a message saying why you deserve the subscription, and we will choose one lucky winner October 1st. So make sure you head over there. Our good friend BV, he's entered in the contest because he really wants the subscription. So make sure you get in on that. But guys, first things first, the latest AP poll ratings came out today. Now, I know you guys are going to have a lot to say because there are some very interesting selections in here. So guys, whoever wants to go first, you may take the mic and take the stage.
I'm going to start with Oklahoma State. I think this is a very talented football team. We've talked a lot about Mason Rudolph and James Washington and the dynamic duo between them, but they moved up 3 spots for a win that I didn't feel like was incredibly marquee on the week. They beat up on what I call a very average Pitt team. Now, I know there were some losses this week among the top 25, specifically in the top 10, but to move Oklahoma State up 3 spots for a win like that, I'm scratching my head about it a little bit.
If we're looking at the top 4, I don't really see a whole lot of problems with it. The only concern that I have is Penn State because they haven't really played a marquee team yet. So they've shown that they can beat up on teams that don't really have an offense, don't really have a defense. I thought Pitt was going to be better at the beginning of the year, but that's not the case. If we're looking at the top 10, again, I haven't seen a whole lot from Washington either. I think they should be top 10, but I know that they dropped 1 spot in the AP top 10, so not too much of a concern with that. The biggest thing for me over everything is Oregon moving in, Utah moving in, and San Diego State moving in. Now, whether or not Oregon and Utah deserve to be in, I don't think we've really seen that yet. I think Oregon beat a Nebraska team that's not as good as we thought. San Diego State, I'm sure we'll touch on it later, but I think San Diego State is real, which makes ASU's loss to San Diego State look not as bad. So I think that's good for ASU, but all in all, I think San Diego State's real.
Yeah, Josh, you took the words right out of my mouth. The way that San Diego State's played these past 2 weeks, beating 2 straight Pac-12 teams, one on the road, one at home, and ASU and Stanford. I think they played very well, and I think they're one of these teams that came into the year with really no chance of getting in the top 25 or even considered it, and now they're sitting pretty at 22. So I like where they're at in this ranking.
Yeah, definitely. Those are the ones that caught my eye at 22, 23, and 24. We all expected them to make the jump in there. I thought Colorado would be another Pac-12 school that got in there, but we'll have to wait and see. But I look here and I see Mississippi State at 17. They knocked off LSU, and Mississippi State wasn't even ranked last week. And they just hop in all the way there to 17, so that's very impressive. But looking at the rest of the list, there's nothing really that catches my eye. Josh touched up on it. Washington, they have literally played maybe the worst 3 teams in all of college football this year. They haven't proved anything. But for the most part, I got no complaints.
See, one thing that I don't understand, and I mean, this is something we can bring up, but I've never been a big fan of teams who weren't ranked the week before jumping ahead of the top 20. Now, Mississippi State had a convincing win. They deserve to be in the top 25, but I would put them at 20 and no higher because it's still very early in the year, so was this an upset? Is this a convincing win showing that they're a good team? Is this saying that LSU maybe isn't as good as we thought? I think it's too early to tell all of these things. Just like last year how Texas beat Notre Dame and everyone thought Notre Dame was great. Texas wins. Texas jumps up to 10 and everyone thought Texas was great. And it turned out that, no offense to Lyle, but neither of these teams were very good at all last year, which is why I think these early season rankings are not a joke, but they're pretty much irrelevant.
Well, here's what I don't get. So Mississippi State, they weren't ranked. They come into 17. So if they're ranking them at 17, the AP poll voters thinks that Mississippi State's a very good team. So if that's the case, why did LSU fall? I think they were ranked maybe 12. They fell from 12 to 25, which is an insane fall. Now, granted, they did lose by 30. It was at Mississippi State, but if Mississippi State is as good as everyone thinks, I think dropping LSU almost out of the top 25 is crazy. But here's another thing that caught my eye, and we'll just touch up on this for very briefly because I know we can spend at least 30 minutes on this. UCLA did lose to Memphis, who did receive 21 votes, but UCLA was ranked 25th. They didn't receive 1 vote. So last week, the voters vote UCLA into the top 25. They lose by 3 points to an obviously good Memphis team that is ranked about, I think, 31st, and they don't receive 1 vote. So is that just on the voters? Because I feel that makes no sense at all. Like, at least 1 vote.
I mean, if we're being totally honest, you look at UCLA's 2 wins. It was a Texas A&M team that is not very good, and it was a Hawaii team that, again, is not very good. So why UCLA was getting votes, I understand. Why they were ranked in the top 25, I don't understand at all. So I understand there was a lot of hype around them after Texas A&M. They had, I guess, a pretty quiet win over Hawaii because no one needs to make a big deal about Hawaii unless it's a last-second UCLA survives or something like that, and Rosen played pretty well. But again, like, these are 2 teams that they should have beaten with ease, and for Hawaii, they did. So now losing to Memphis, who, like we said, is a pretty good football team. Again, we haven't seen them play any other competition other than UCLA, but I don't think they should have been deserving of votes in the first place.
You know, and looking at one of these teams that's jumping in the top 25, they're sitting at 16 right now. That's TCU. And I mentioned them in the first episode as one of my sleeper teams to work their way up in the top 25, and they've really done that very quietly. They really don't, I don't know how their biggest win this season, but it really hasn't been that big because they haven't been on the national stage, haven't been on national TV really at all, and yet they're jumping up and sitting at 16.
Yeah, their biggest matchup's definitely going to come up this week, but Kenny Hill quietly has had a very nice year at TCU. One more I want to touch on. Every week I seem to have some problem with the AP poll, and I found it this week, and that's Miami. They jumped 3 spots to number 14. They didn't play a football game this week. How did they jump 3 spots for not playing? Does anybody want to touch on that?
I have no idea.
So are we all just in total shock and disbelief on Miami, how you jumped 3 spots for not playing?
Like, I understand, obviously, why they're not playing, but there are more deserving teams to be occupying that spot in the rankings. I agree with Lyle. Do I think Miami should be ranked? Yes, but again, we haven't seen a whole lot of Miami football this year for obvious reasons, which is disappointing. So I don't see how we can judge their play on the field and rank them this high when they're not playing they're 1-0.
Now, here's another quick thing I want to touch up on is Michigan's there at 8, which I feel is a very generous ranking because the 3 games that I've seen them play this year, they did not look the best. I mean, what was it? Cincinnati last week, they were close. Who was it this week they were playing where they literally
they played Air Force this week.
Yeah.
But the reason why that was and this is something that I saw on television, and I thought the same thing, was when it comes to Michigan's not a team that's going to blow anybody out, and that's because they have a stout defense, and it's because their offense is very conservative. So when you play a team like Air Force, which pretty much runs a very similar offense, not to the fact that they're running the same plays or the same style of plays, but because they're also a very conservative offense. A game that's 27-10 is a big win for Michigan because this is going to be a low-scoring game regardless. That's why I think Michigan is still deserving of a top 10 ranking. There's no reason they should have fallen out of the top 10. Same thing with Washington. I think they're in the same boat as Washington, except Michigan has played better competition than UW, and they've beaten better competition than UW. So there's no reason for either of them to be falling out of the top 10. But again, they don't have a whole lot to keep them in the top 10, if that makes sense. But Michigan, of course, does have a win over Florida.
Michigan does kind of remind me of last year's Clemson, where I feel every game they're in, they easily could not or maybe should not win, but they get them out. But Michigan's definitely a team to keep an eye on because I feel, especially once they get into those Big Ten matchups, they might be slipping a few games. But just really quickly rounding out the other receiving votes, West Virginia was the most. Colorado, as I mentioned, I thought they were going to be ranked, but most likely they'll be ranked next week. Maryland, they are just cracking it. They're at 27, 28 right now, so they're on the borderline. Vanderbilt, they had amazing helmets this past week. I believe they're playing Alabama this week, I think. We'll touch on that later in the show. And Lyle, there's your Notre Dame, just borderline, almost ready to come in. Cal has received 19 votes. They might see a top 25 appearance. Stanford. Now, this is a team that has just all of a sudden fallen out. This was a team that a lot of people had in their playoff predictions, literally winning the Pac-12. After these past weeks, doesn't look like that's going to happen. Rounding down the list, we got Duke, Kansas State, Kentucky, Texas Tech receiving 4 well-earned votes after their upset win against Arizona State. Then you got Michigan State with 1 vote, Houston at 1. But guys, like I said, looking at the list, not really too upset about it. Like I said, it is the AP poll. A lot can still change. But we're going to switch things up right now and have a little fun. I know it's still very early in the season, very, very early. Which 4 teams you each think are going to make the college football playoff? Who would they be?
I'll start it off, and for me, there are 3 very easy choices. And it's Alabama, number 1. I think Oklahoma and USC is a toss-up between 2 and 3, and potentially even 4. Now, my toss-up for that final spot, I'm going to throw in 2 teams, and it's going to be Penn State and it's going to be Clemson. And the reason is because, like I said earlier with my ranking for Penn State, I haven't seen enough of them against a good team. So I don't know how to judge them based on the competition that they've played. Do I think they're a good team? Oh, of course. Their offense is incredible. You have Trace McSorley and you have Saquon Barkley, which might be one of the best duos in college football. So I think they've got an incredible offense. Defensively, they've got a stout defense. But then you look at Clemson. And Clemson was a team that I think a lot of people were maybe overlooking this year after the national championship. But this week, I think they proved that they belong in the national spotlight. I just don't know how long they're going to stay there and if they're going to stay there until the end of the season. Because, again, we haven't seen them against, Louisville's a good team, but I want to see them against a good team that can put points on the board against that defense. So I know that's asking a lot, but I do want to see them play more tough teams. And I just don't know who in the ACC is going to be able to rival them other than Virginia Tech.
I think my 3 for sure is Alabama. They're going to come out of the SEC. No surprise there. I do think Penn State wins the Big Ten and grabs a playoff spot. So there's my second team. I still think USC, despite the tough game, we'll touch on that more later against Texas this week, gets the Pac-12 spot and gets the number 3 gig into the college football playoff. And then you look at that number 4 team. I'm kind of in the same boat as Josh where I'm up in the air trying to figure out who that last team will be at this point. I know I said Oklahoma State jumped up a little far in the AP poll, but I still like them. I think this is the first time that we're going to see a Big 12 team not the first time we'll see them in a college football playoff, but the first time it's very, very deserving in the sense of we've talked about in the past how the Big 12 kind of gets the short end of the stick because they don't have a conference championship. Well, now they do. We're going to see them play Oklahoma most likely twice this year if things play out the way we think. And if they can beat them twice, and I think with the offense they have, they will, they grab that 4th spot. Now, I know that kind of leaves Clemson in a frenzy, and I think Kelly Bryant's been very talented. I think he shadows Deshaun Watson in a sense, but I don't know. I think come down the line, we might see him lose a critical game late in the year, maybe even an ACC championship type of game.
Well, like you said about Bryant, Lyle, Deshaun Watson came out the other day and straight up said that his predecessor could be better than he was. And he said Bryant has the ability to be better than Deshaun Watson is. And that's a long shot for him, but there's a chance he could. But I'm going to stick with mine. I'm going to leave it short and sweet. I'm going to go with Alabama, Oklahoma, Penn State, and USC. I don't think Clemson makes it because they will have that inexperience at the quarterback position. Yes, Bryant's very good, but I don't think he'll lead his team to a playoff spot, but definitely near 6 for sure.
See, I'm looking at this, and I feel there's only 2 for sure locks, and that's Alabama. And I know you guys are going to think I'm nuts, but that's Clemson. Because Clemson, I thought their only competition in the ACC was Florida State. Granted, we haven't seen a Florida State game without Francois since Alabama because, of Hurricane Irma, so we don't know how they're going to be. But I feel, especially now after defeating Louisville this past week, there's no competition for them in the ACC. The only way they blow is if they slip a game. Maybe Virginia Tech and the Fees will have to wait and see. Now, the rest, I think this is when the 6-team playoff is finally going to come to fruition because I feel after this year, it's going to have to happen because you look down the list. Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, it's got to be definitely one of those teams. Now, it's going to be tough for each one of those teams to beat the same team twice. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but I do think Oklahoma State's going to be one of them. And then I look at the Big Ten. I think Penn State, I've said this before, I think Penn State's the best team in the Big Ten. But then I look at USC, and USC, as we all know, has a fairly easy schedule now since they got Stanford out of the way. Notre Dame, I think, is probably their hardest game the rest of the season. So if they can do that, I think they're going to cruise right through. So it's just a matter of, which team wins their conference championship game, because that's what it's going to come down to. Because I can look at this list and I can name you 6 or 7 that I could see in my top 4. So I think we're just going to have to wait and see how things play out. But as I just touched up on, I think this is going to be the season that is going to lead whoever's in charge of making this decision to expand the playoff to 6 or 8, because there are so many good teams. And look, if you just look at the top 6, thinking that 2 of those teams can make it, someone's going to be left out, so we're going to have to wait and see.
You also have to remember how early in the season it is, though. 4 weeks from now, some tiers will be formed in a sense. We're going to realize some of these teams in the top 10 maybe aren't as good as we thought, and it'll be pretty blatant to us by the end of the year. Could there be a snub? Of course. Sometimes it happens, but I think come week 7, 8, we'll have a much better idea.
That's what makes this so exciting, because as we've seen in years past, back when, a few years ago, Mississippi State was ranked first. I don't know how long that was, and they just kind of fell off the map. So a lot of things can happen, a lot of games still to be played. Luckily for Alabama, they don't have to worry about playing Chattanooga this year, so they can ease up on that a little. But guys, switching up, there were a few games this week, and we probably had, and I know it's only a few weeks in the season, but this is definitely a candidate, especially a Harris Highlights Award Show candidate for Game of the Year, and that is USC Texas. I'm going to start with Josh. Josh, was it worth the 11-year wait?
Yes, it was. It was definitely worth the 11-year wait. I wish it had come sooner. I think when both teams were more in the national spotlight more, because now I think the only team that you really have in the national spotlight is USC. But I don't think you can complain about that anymore. I think that game was everything we asked for, if not more. We had talked about, I think USC is going to put up 50 points on these guys, and I thought they were too. I don't remember if I gave a score prediction last week, but I thought it was going to be like 52-28, 52-35, and I thought it was going to be close for the first half, but USC would pull away. But I cannot begin to describe how impressed I was with Texas's front 7. Their front 7 was incredible. And I think the reason why USC is going to, I think people are still going to be impressed with the win because of how they won it and their last drive of the game. Darnold was incredible the last drive and in overtime. But I think a lot of people are going to overlook the fact that USC held them to 1 offensive touchdown in regulation. So I look past the defense in overtime because the defense, of course, is backed up. At this point, you're looking at what the offense is going to do, not the defense. That's how I look at it. So when Texas has the ball, I'm not looking, okay, USC's defense needs to stop them. I'm looking at Texas's offense. So for the most part, I think the defensive struggle in this game was incredible. I thought both defenses totally stole the show. I feel bad for Darnold because, again, we go back to a very good USC receiving core dropping passes. And then when you look at the front 7 for Texas, the offensive line for Texas, they were getting pushed around the first half, a little bit in the third quarter until USC started, suffering from a few injuries and a few guys left the game, which I hope aren't too bad. But I felt bad for the two quarterbacks in this game because it seemed like first half Darnold wasn't getting help from his receivers and Ellinger wasn't getting help from his offensive line. All in all, worth the 11-year wait. I have no complaints on this game, and I feel good for Texas fans and for USC fans.
Yeah, coming into the game, and I think I told this to Josh, I was saying I wasn't that amped for the game because Texas is such a letdown. It's not going to be a high-ranking matchup. But, man, although Texas nearly won, I'm glad it was that kind of a game because I was getting scared. In that fourth quarter, and I said this to Josh as well, when they cut to Vince Young on the sideline, I know he is definitely ineligible. He's been out of football for a few years, but there was just a part of me that was thinking, man, I sure hope he doesn't come in the game right now because I'm not ready for this. I mean, Texas, we kind of bagged on them the last few weeks, especially after that Maryland game, and they earned my respect. That defense on Texas, I don't know what the deal in that Maryland game was, but whoever they played last week, they shut them out. I think it was maybe San Jose State. They shut them out, and they almost shut out. I mean, that defense, like I said, it was phenomenal. So Texas, that was, and like I said, nothing will ever make up for what happened 11 years ago. I think 9-year-old Blake is still crying to this day, but that, I mean, like I said, that it makes it a little sweeter. Of course, we still don't have bragging rights. But this gets me, I completely forgot. Next year, SC travels to Texas for the rematch. So I know that place is going to be rocking. I want to try to go to that game, but I was very impressed. Like I said, I'm glad it wasn't a blowout. I'm glad it was a thrilling game. And I wasn't watching with you, Brady, or Josh, or even Lyle, but one of the coolest things from the entire game was after Texas scored that late touchdown, and it just cuts to Matthew McConaughey on the sideline wearing his just orange leather jacket, doing the hook 'em horn sign. I thought that was awesome, but I really enjoyed the game, especially then. Was it Burnett after he caught the touchdown in overtime? Went over and he shook Matt Leinert's hand. I think that was super cool.
The best part about that was I don't think he saw him at first. He didn't know he was there. At least that's what it looked like. It looked like he caught the pass and was running in the end zone and did like a double take and was like, oh shoot, that's Matt Leinart, and went up and shook his hand.
Well, Blake, you said you cried when USC lost. Did you cry when they won?
I mean, I didn't cry, but there was a huge relief let off my shoulders.
Well, I'll tell you this. One of my good friends who is a USC fan FaceTimed me after the game. This sounds really weird to say. I wish I had video of this, but he was crying on his bed, jumping up and down in his underwear, and it was the weirdest thing I've ever seen from a grown 19-year-old man, just because USC won the game. And he was like, damn Texas, USC won, 11 years in the making. And he was crying in his underwear, jumping and down on the bed like a 4-year-old girl. It was pretty funny.
I feel like it's something hard to explain. It's like, it's a win 10 years later, but I feel like only USC fans can truly explain
exactly
like how, because if Texas would have won last night, that would have been just demoralizing for USC fans. I mean, that would have been brutal. So, yeah, it was a win against a team that wasn't ranked, a team that USC was clearly better than, but it was a much-needed win for the USC program, and I'm sure for that entire 2005 team.
And one reason why I think it means so much, even though it wasn't a national championship game or even a Rose Bowl, is the fact that it was 11 years in the making. And you know that for players who grew up USC fans, they feel it. For fans who were there, like nothing's going to take that pain away, but this helps. And I know I'm speaking for you too, because you just said this, but I remember watching Vince Young score that touchdown, and I sat down on the ground and I cried myself to sleep and I was watching the game with our friend Greg, who I believe was on the show last year, and he grew up a USC fan. And he kept walking back and forth when Texas was driving down the field that last very minute of the fourth quarter. He's walking back and forth saying, this is 11 years ago, this is 11 years ago, this is 11 years ago. And we felt the same way, and we both reacted so crazily when USC won, because that was your entire childhood as a USC fan coming back to haunt you. Because USC won, 2 or 3 Rose Bowls after that game, but everyone still looks back and thinks they could have had a three-peat, and they didn't.
But like I said, the fact that they get a rematch next year is phenomenal. A few other games to talk about really quickly. One I want to touch up on really quickly is Florida-Tennessee, which was arguably the most boring game of the entire weekend until about 10 seconds left in the fourth quarter when I was watching this with Lyle. We were freaking out. I don't know if you even want to call it a Hail Mary. It was kind of just, you just threw it.
Just a pass.
It was just a pass, and he caught it, and they scored. So really quickly, what were your thoughts on that final play?
Well, I'd say it was a very long pass. It wasn't an ordinary pass. Felipe Franks chucked that thing as far as he absolutely could, and that Tennessee corner just got absolutely beat. And that's something we've all talked about, even off this show, is how in the world did he let any receiver get behind him? That's what you do on the final play of a game like that. You're supposed to be in prevent defense. They preach, do not let anybody behind you, and he gets beat like that. But in that fashion, in the swamp down there in Gainesville, it was unreal. It was crazy to watch. And man, I have no words. That game, like Blake said, it was so boring for the first 57, 58 minutes of the game. And then to cap it off like that, it's our first real thriller of the year.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down this coverage. And what the big thing is what we've talked about before we had the Q&A was Lyle asked why weren't they in a prevent defense? And the simple answer was there was 9 seconds left on the clock and it was 1st and 10. What the thing was, the field goal marker in this play was right around the opposite 40-yard line, or 35-yard line. And so what Tennessee was projecting Florida to do was get the first down, get a quick out route, and get something towards that field goal marker and get out of bounds. Florida also had a timeout left, so they could have used that. But with 9 seconds left, they took the ball, and the quarterback for Florida just sort of scrambled around as Tennessee only rushed 4 guys. He got hit in the backfield, but then called an audible mid-play, sent the receiver downfield, and he broke through the double coverage. So Tennessee started off the play in only a deep cover 2, which is something you run on a first down, not a prevent defense, which is when you have 6 to even 7 guys back in a coverage on your defense, where we only saw 2 to 3 guys deep playing a cover 2 zone deep. So they were just preventing them from getting that field goal to prevent that field goal marker, but instead they let up the deep touchdown, which in turn hurt them. But at the point with 9 seconds left, it was a smart strategic play call to have.
Not sure if Brady Klein or Tony Romo with the play-by-play breakdown right there. That was phenomenal.
That's called color commentating, Blake.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
Really quickly before
What is their deal on Travelocity right now?
Well, you just said play-by-play, and that was a color commentator.
Now, here's a game that wasn't a part of our pick'ems last week, but I sure wish was Mississippi State LSU. Now, for some odd reason, tomorrow waking up, I said Mississippi State, they're going to get the job done. Nick Fitzgerald's going to lead them to victory. Lyle, you had some opposing words to that statement, but Mississippi State, they defeated LSU by 30 points. Truly unreal. And, of course, the other game of the night, Clemson, Louisville. Everyone here picked Clemson except for me. I thought Lamar Jackson was going to have a much better performance. But Clemson's offense scoring 47 points. You know, the first few games, it was mainly the defense that we talked about, but 47 points is unreal. And I feel Kelly Bryant, this was his coming out party to show that, I don't know if he's going to surpass Deshaun Watson, but he definitely has the potential. But I don't think you guys were surprised.
Well, I think something that Lyle brought up last week, or you know what, maybe it wasn't even on the show, but we had talked about this before, how Lyle doesn't think that Lamar Jackson shows up for important games, and I agree with him. Now, you can make the argument, which Blake did, about last year he showed up against Florida State. However, that was, at this point, as we're recording, 365 days ago. And since then, he hasn't showed up in big games. He won the Heisman and didn't show up in his bowl game. He doesn't show up against Clemson. And I get that he doesn't have as many weapons around him as, say, Kelly Bryant does, or Sam Darnold does, or Baker Mayfield does, etc. But I just want to see more from him in these big-time games, especially in front of a home crowd, a conference game against a very good Clemson team. And he was silent. Now, he had a really nice touchdown late in the game, but I want to see more from him. And there's a lot of hype around him, especially with the way he played last week. But if he's going to be in the Heisman contention, he's got to be able to not only beat good teams, but just compete with good teams.
You look at his stat line for this game. The guy only completed 50% of his passes, and then you can look at his total yards and touchdowns. Well, 2 of those 3 touchdowns came in garbage time in that game. They scored 14 points in the fourth quarter when the game was already out of hand. Clemson had pulled away. But that's my thing with Lamar Jackson is, one, I personally don't think he shows up for big games ever since that Florida State game and the Clemson game last year, where he did play very well in Death Valley. But since then, he lost to Houston. He lost to Memphis last year. He lost that Citrus Bowl to LSU. And now at home against Clemson again, when they talk about a team that is supposed to be worse because 2016's Clemson team won it all, the game was out of hand by the third quarter. My thing with Lamar Jackson is simply, the guy does have a great arm. The guy is an elite athlete, but I think when the pocket gets flushed, he's too quick to try to use his running ability to get out of the pocket, and maybe that flies now in college football, but come down the road, especially on Sundays, it's not. So that's why I have some questions around Lamar Jackson. Yes, he's obviously a very good quarterback. Yes, he'll probably compete for the Heisman, but there are some quarterbacks I would take over him on my team if I were to build a team and start with one quarterback. Lamar Jackson actually would not be the first guy I would take.
Like I said this in the last couple of episodes, guys, the Heisman is won and lost in the first 6 games of the season. And last year we saw Lamar Jackson win it in the first 6 games of the season. And he didn't show up for the bigger game for the second half, for the bowl games, like you guys said. And you look at this last year as well, there was a bunch of hype around a different player, Leonard Fournette, in the first 6 games of the season. Everyone's saying, well, it's between him and Lamar Jackson. It's between him and Lamar Jackson. And then he just fell off. Yes, he got hurt, but the Heisman, in my opinion, is won in the first 6 games of the season. And Lamar Jackson hasn't done enough so far to re-win and regain his stance as the top college football player.
Well, I agree with what you were saying about Lamar, but I don't know about the first half of the season, because you think about 2 years ago when Leonard Fournette took the college football world by storm in the first half of the year, and then after that Alabama game when Derrick Henry took over, he ran away with it come December.
My only thing is Lamar Jackson, he lost his top 3 wide receivers from last year's team. His top 3. Secondly, can you even name me who Louisville's running back is?
I can. His name is Malik Williams.
I mean,
Where did he go to high school, Lyle?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know.
the thing about Lamar Jackson is he is the offense. They do go through him. Now, like I said, his game against Clemson was not that good, but he didn't allow the 47 points. That was on the defense. So, granted, he does need to show up against the big games. Last year he did. But then you guys said, oh, he lost some games last year. That was last year. As I mentioned, last year he didn't have that many good weapons. He had James Quick, who I guess you could say is his best receiver. James Quick, I mean, was that guy even drafted? I'm not entirely sure. And this year, I mean, I'm looking at who his receivers are. I guess Jalen Smith might be his best option. He doesn't have a whole lot. So granted, not a whole lot of him. He can't do that much. He entirely is the entire offense, but like I said, we'll give him that. And really quickly, just another thing I want to touch up on, and that is San Diego State getting the win against Stanford. So now back-to-back weeks, they knocked down some Pac-12 schools. I think it was Josh at the beginning of the show mentioned San Diego State's going to win the Pac-12 conference, and they're not even in the conference. That's how good they've been playing. So that was an exciting win, especially seeing the students storm the field. And it was Brady that said, I'm sorry, Brady. I owe you like a cookie or something for that one.
Okay.
All right, sounds good.
I'll split it with you, Josh. Don't worry. It's fine.
But lots of good games this week, guys, but we have some even better games this week. We'll get to that in a bit because it is now time for the Q&A. And a little special fun this week, guys. We didn't post a Q&A video, so luckily Brady didn't have to scroll through hundreds and hundreds of comments. This week's Q&A was specifically caller Q&A, so if you guys are interested in calling in, asking a question, all you got to do is just hit me up on Twitter, send me a message, and we'll set something up. So without further ado, guys, let's get to these callers and see what kind of questions they got for us. All right, now we got Connor on. So Connor, first question, where are you from, how old are you, and what's your team?
I'm from Maryland. I'm 22, and I root for Virginia Tech.
Oh, Virginia, a good one. I think you guys are up to 13 now, so you guys are making that top 10 push. All right, Connor, what do you got for us this week, my man?
Yeah, my question was actually about the upcoming Clemson-Virginia Tech game in 2 weeks. I know that Clemson obviously just absolutely demolished Louisville, but, Virginia Tech, if this is a night game, Virginia Tech is always rocking on night games. So I was wondering about you guys' thoughts on that game and whether Virginia Tech would actually host College Game Day that weekend.
Now, I think they will because, like I said, I believe at the moment Virginia Tech is ranked 13. I think Clemson is 3. So barring some, upset in the next week, I don't see them going down. So if that's the case, I think without a doubt Virginia Tech will be hosting. And as you mentioned, since Virginia Tech is home and it's a night game, I think that's advantage Virginia Tech. We've seen what they can do at home. What was that, a few years ago when they took down Ohio State? I mean, that place was insane. So I do think for Clemson, especially now considering what's going on with Florida State and they just took care of Louisville, I think if there's going to be any game this year where Clemson goes down, it's going to be in, 2 weeks at Virginia Tech.
I can definitely see it. I mean, the only other big marquee game on that Saturday is Auburn and Mississippi State. Now, of course, Wazoo and USC play that Friday. So I do see College Game Day being at Virginia Tech that Saturday. In terms of who wins the game, I know it's at Virginia Tech. I know that's a hostile place to play, but I just think Clemson is a little too talented to go down. I think they kind of take their conference by storm, or not by storm, but they take it pretty handily.
See, I think that there are a lot of good games that week. I think that the Virginia Tech Clemson game is the best. I mean, unless Murray State makes a dramatic comeback within the next few weeks, and maybe game day will be in Louisville for Murray State and Louisville. But bottom line, I think it's going to be Clemson and Virginia Tech. It's going to be a tough environment for Clemson for obvious reasons, just like you said, especially for a night game. I think Virginia Tech can not easily pull this off, but I think they have one of the best chances to pull off an upset over a team like Clemson.
No disrespect to Virginia Tech at all, but I think that College Game Day is going to follow Clemson wherever they go this year, kind of like they did last season with Louisville. But I think it will be a really good one because what do you say, like they're 13th right now?
Yeah.
So 13th versus 3, if it stands this way, I think there's really no chance College Game Day is not in Virginia Tech in 2 weeks. And I think it'd be a great atmosphere as well.
Now, really quick, Connor, I mean, obviously you follow Virginia Tech better than any of us. Really quickly, do you think not only do they have a chance to beat Clemson, but do they have any sort of chance in the ACC at all?
Well, I mean, after this week, I mean, every Virginia Tech fan was a little bit afraid with ECU because they've been giving us problems for the past couple of years. I mean, they beat us at home after we beat Ohio State a few years back. So, ECU I see as kind of the ultimate trap game for Virginia Tech. But seeing their offense, seeing Josh Jackson, play like a veteran, he looked good. I just think that Louisville. When I think of Louisville. Home advantage. It's completely different compared to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech at night, if it's a night game, is just completely different. So I mean, I would give them a chance, but to be honest, I wouldn't be really surprised if Clemson did come in and win. But I think it'll be. I would hope it would be at least a little bit closer than the Louisville game.
Well, Virginia Tech somehow does manage the upset. We're definitely going to have to get you back on. But Connor, I appreciate you staying up late. I know it's kind of late over there, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Yeah, and also quick thing. Thanks for the SeatGeek Harris Highlights discount. I was able to get tickets for the Clemson game, so I'm going to be able to go to that.
Oh, perfect. Make sure you send us photos from that game as well.
Yeah, and I'll also be at the College Game Day in Times Square next week. I'm going to have a sign that you guys are probably going to like very much that I'll send you guys a picture of later, okay?
Perfect. Love to hear it, Connor. Thank you again, my man.
Awesome, guys. Have a great night.
All right, Ryan, welcome to the show. First question, how old are you, where are you from, and who's your team?
Well, I'm 17. I'm from Illinois. Notre Dame fan, of course.
There we go. I know Lyle is rejoicing with this one right here. I'm sure he's dying to talk Notre Dame football. But Ryan, what do you got for us this week, my man?
Well, I wanted to talk about the Notre Dame team. I feel like we're kind of underrated after the loss against Georgia. I feel like we should have never been dropped out of the top 25. I feel like we're at least top 20, best team in the country. I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel our defense may be top 15 in the country just by how they played against Boston College and especially against Georgia. I see people not talking about how they held Nick Chubb and Tony Michel both under 100 yards rushing. But yeah, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I feel like there's no one better than to answer this question than good old Lyle. So Lyle, take this one away.
Well, you guys can give your thoughts too after, but I'm with you in the sense that they are definitely a top 25 team. It's just, I've mentioned this a lot on this show. It's hard with the AP poll to really get it right because it's essentially, they see it as if you lose early in the year, they're just going to drop you out. Now, we'll see where they're at when the actual college football rankings come out. And I'm with you that they played Georgia tough. They beat up on Temple. They beat up on Boston College. But I think they're going to have to win a marquee game before they start getting more national attention. I think if you see them beat a team like USC, even a team like Miami later in the year, I think you'll definitely start to see Notre Dame jump climb up the AP poll a little bit. But defense is definitely looking much improved from last year. Brandon Wimbush, while he needs to improve on his passing game a little bit, he showed that he's a superior athlete and he can really run the football. Him and Josh Adams have been just an absolute dynamic duo back there. But yeah, I'm high on Notre Dame for this year, much higher than last year, and I'm excited to see where they take this season.
Yeah, I think that, coming into this season, I was not really high on Notre Dame, but I liked what I saw from them coming into the year. And so far, what I've seen, I don't dislike anything. I've liked pretty much everything I saw. Of course, the Georgia game, but that is a very, very tough team. And I was telling Lyle after the game, hey, you guys lost by 1 to a team that a lot of people weren't even considering you guys to be in this game against. And it was just I think they've got a good team. I think, like Lyle said, they need to take down a marquee team like USC to really, I think, get the attention of the country. And there's no doubt in my mind that that's going to be a fantastic game. It's going to be in South Bend. It's going to be at night, which is always a hostile environment. And it's USC and Notre Dame. It's the best intersectional rivalry in college football. So it's going to be a great game regardless. Those games usually are, especially in South Bend. So I think Notre Dame, if they can pull off that win over SC, they're going to be extremely relevant. But I'm also thinking if they lose, they should be in a position where they're still in the top 25.
My quick thing on Notre Dame is they definitely are a much better team than last year. And I've talked with this about Lyle multiple times. The AP poll, I wouldn't worry about it too much in the year. It definitely doesn't determine anything. Wait until the college football rankings come out. But I agree with you. Notre Dame is definitely top 25, top 20, maybe defense-wise top 20. Offense, I feel they need to step it up a little more, especially in those big games. Naturally, Georgia's defense is amazing. But I think Notre Dame's going to be fine. All right, so we got Blake Bounds on right now. Blake, first off, thanks for calling in. 2 questions for you right off the bat. Where are you from and who's your team?
I am from Norman, Oklahoma, and my team is the Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah, I know you're probably the most famous Sooners fan on the in the comments section because always, no matter what, I can always rely on an Oklahoma comment from you. And you've actually opened up my eyes the last few weeks and made me realize that I've been maybe a little harsh on Oklahoma. So I got to thank you for that. But Blake, my man, what do you got for us this week?
My question is, for all y'all, what college football fan base do y'all hate the most, and which one do you respect the most?
Well, I think automatically I know Josh's answer, so I'll go to him for the first one.
In terms of disliking a program, it started a few years ago, but for me it's UCLA, and it's more so because of the way I was treated for certain encounters with UCLA, which I don't need to go into now. But which program I respect the most? Honestly, probably Notre Dame. I think it's weird that I dislike one rival but really like the other. So I'm a huge. Well, I have a lot of respect for Notre Dame. I'm not a huge fan, but in terms of fan base, I have the utmost respect for Nebraska.
I don't know if I really have a fan base that I dislike a lot. I mean, Notre Dame's rivals, you think of Michigan, you think of USC, teams like that, but I never found any real hatred for them. In terms of respect, I honestly really respect Clemson. From a great fan base to a great coach in Dabo Swinney, you can tell players want to be there. So my pick would be Clemson.
I really don't think I have one that I hate because I'm an IU football fan and we really suck. So I could say Purdue or any of the other Big Ten teams, but I really don't have a team that I hate the fan base. The one that I respect the most, I'd have to honestly agree with Josh, and that's with Nebraska because since 1966, they've sold out every single home game. That's 100-plus games. So you really have to respect that fan base, and also sticking up in that region. You have to go Oregon, too, because they're one of those fan bases that always shows up, always shows out, and always respects their team.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. But now this one, I'm going to go back to what you told me about 2 weeks ago when you were at the Ohio State game and how you mentioned that you said all the Ohio State fans were very respectable towards you. So although I haven't witnessed them firsthand, what you did tell me, I'm going to ride with them on that one because like you said, you were in a very, very tough environment. You said like you were kind of in a little section, just Oklahoma gear. But you said you were treated fairly, and because of that, they gave you a good rap. So I'm going to go with Ohio State. In terms of bad ones, I mean, that's really tough. I mean, I haven't really experienced any truly fans where I've been like, you know what, because of that fan base, I think they're terrible. Now, if it comes to like fan base in general, I think I have to give it Josh on UCLA just because they can't fill out a stadium. But that's gonna be my one thing. But I'm sure you, especially being an Oklahoma fan, you've seen some probably good Big 12 games. So in your opinion, who do you think is the best and worst fan base?
In my opinion, the worst fan base, I mean, this might be a little biased, but Texas be the worst fan base. And the best fan base, most respected, would honestly be Nebraska, along with y'all as well, because I went to an Oklahoma-Nebraska game in 2010, and they were amazing, their fan base.
Yeah, it seems like that's the correlation here. Nebraska, good fans, some of the most loyal. Now, Blake, before you go, like I said, I know you're a huge Oklahoma fan, so really quickly, we'll make sure we get you on later, a few weeks down the line when they play that Oklahoma State game. But really quickly, do you think Oklahoma is legit?
Oh, I do, but we're probably going to have to play Oklahoma State twice this year because of the Big 12 championship. I do not think each team can beat each other twice, so I feel like whoever loses the first game is going to win the Big 12 championship. Is what I feel like is going to happen. I do feel like Oklahoma is legit, but to get to the playoffs, they're going to have to lose to Oklahoma State in the regular season. I'm pretty sure. I don't think either team can beat each other twice.
Yeah, like I said, so whenever that Oklahoma State game is, we'll make sure we get you on. But Blake, thank you for staying up, my man, and I'm sure we'll be talking more USC Oklahoma soon.
Thank you for having me.
Night, man. We got Max now on the show. So Max, I guess just first question for you. How old are you? Where are you from? And who's your team?
I'm 14 years old and I live in Gainesville, Florida. And I have 3 teams, so it's kind of a long story. So my mom went to Penn State and my dad went to USC and my dad went to Florida for grad school. So I like Penn State, USC, and Florida.
Wow, that's quite the trio there. You might be the only kid in the entire country with those 3 teams.
Possibly, yeah.
Now, really quickly, how crazy did you go after that Florida game-winning Hail Mary?
Oh my God, I was running around the house and stuff because on the college pick 'em, because I'm in your league and I'm in like 3 other leagues as well. I picked Florida and like in my other leagues, everyone else picked Tennessee. And I thought like Florida wasn't going to win. I was going to drop and stuff. When he threw that Hail Mary up, I'm just glad they didn't call that timeout. I was speechless.
Well, it sounds like you had a pretty good Saturday on top of that, and USC had a pretty good win as well.
Well,
Yeah.
Now I have a quick question real quick. When you say USC, are you talking about the Trojans or the Gamecocks? Because I know you said you're coming from the Florida area, so I just want to make sure we're talking about the real USC.
Yeah, the real USC.
Okay,
cool.
Okay, perfect there. All right, so now we got that out of the way. Max, what do you got for us this week?
Well, my first question for you is, how did you, excuse me, Stanford versus San Diego State? How did you feel about that game? What are your reactions to that?
We talked about this last week, and I feel we were sleeping on San Diego State a little too much. We all picked Stanford to win, but barely. But I know Josh especially was more proud that San Diego State won because, he has personal ties. But that was very impressive. I mean, I love San Diego State winning that game. The fact that they were able to the students were storming the field after beating Stanford, I think that was awesome. But overall, I mean, I'm very impressed with that game.
I think, by the way, San Diego State's playing right now that they're going to win the Pac-12, and they're not even in the Pac-12 conference right now.
Yeah, I thought that San Diego State with consecutive wins over Pac-12 teams, and I think that a lot of people, especially here in the Phoenix area, saw that San Diego State beat ASU, and I think it's safe to say whether or not ASU is winning games, whether they're ranked, whether they're losing, I think it could be considered an upset because ASU is a Power 5 team, no matter how they're playing. But and a lot of people here in the Phoenix area were really upset about that and are calling for Coach Graham to be fired immediately. But I think a lot of people need to take notice that San Diego State isn't San Diego State of 15 years ago. They're pretty much the same team they were last year. This is still a very good football team. And I think they proved that yesterday because I strongly believe that Stanford is a very good team as well. So I think San Diego State's a really good football team.
I think when San Diego State won their game last week against ASU, I think a lot of people were taking it with a grain of salt because they know ASU isn't the strongest of teams this year, especially in the Pac-12. But to come out and beat a team like Stanford, even if it's at home, that was impressive. That was their first top-notch win in a very, very long time. They've now jumped into the AP poll, and I'm interested to see what they'll do for the remainder of the season.
And they did crack the top 25. All right, Max, I think you said you had one more quick one for us as well?
Yes, I do. So who do you – I know the SEC, if you don't include Alabama, is a bit rough. So who would you guys have right now to go to the SEC championship against Alabama if everything goes as planned for them?
Quick and simple, Georgia. After what I saw against Notre Dame, definitely Georgia. That defense is real.
Well, I know Lyle's answer is my answer too. So
I think he agrees with most of us as well.
I mean, I think Georgia as well, but really quick, if I'm talking about a team that can compete in the SEC in total, I think it's Mississippi State. Now, they are in the same, division, but I think Mississippi State has a chance to take them down. But in regards to that one, I think Georgia is the most likely answer because, I mean, watching that game this past week, their defense, like Lyle said, is real. So my guess is Georgia, but Bama's Bama. It's going to be tough to take them down. But my man, Max, I appreciate you staying up and calling in, and we'll definitely try to get you on the show sometime later in the year. Maybe talking about Florida representing the SEC. That's one team we didn't even mention, the Gator Chop.
Yeah.
All right, my man, you have yourself a good night.
Thanks, and thanks for having me on the show.
Of course, bro. Man, those were some very good questions. It's interesting seeing where the viewers do come from. But guys, the last few weeks, we have been in construction. We've been working on those Pick 'em bells. And Lyle, they're officially working right now. So without further ado, can you start ringing them?
Oh, no problem, Blake. I'd be happy to bring the bells back. I really missed these on the show.
All right, guys. Now, before we do make the pick'ems, it's not. I mean, who knows? It might be too late, but it is not too late to join the official Harris Highlights Pick'em League. Every week, you pick the winner of 10 matchups and compete with hundreds and hundreds of viewers, including us. Whoever has the most points at the end of the year will receive a $25 gift card of their choice. Now, guys, going to the rankings. Last week it was some guy with the name of like Rams something, whatever that was in the title. We officially now have a new leader. It's actually a 3-way tie. Josh, I hate to say it, it's not you this week, but that's okay because you're actually in second in the group. So you got it coming up. The top 3
I will take it.
are Skinny's Picks, Travis 1021, and Roll Wave. Those 3 have 25 out of the 30, and then Josh, you actually got 24. Very impressive. But currently, like I said, have a 3-way tie. As we've seen every week, lots of things are changing. Alrighty, guys. Now we do have pick'em rankings for ourselves. And let's get to it. In last place with 18 is Brady. Now, guys, a little shakeup this week. Josh with 20. He was in first place last week, and now he's all of a sudden fallen, which leaves Lyle and I. Who has more between the roommates? Well, we're going to have to wait another week to find that one out because we are currently tied at 21. So just like that, like I said, anything can happen every week.
It's very close.
First game of the week, NC State at Florida State.
Well, we haven't seen Florida State play football in a little while, but I do think that this break is going to help them. I truly believe that this rest is going to help, and with the game being at Doak Campbell, I think they take it at home.
I like Florida State too. Yes, they lost DeAndre Francois, but their only game of the year has been against Alabama. This is an in-conference game against a solid NC State team. I don't think they're elite, which is why I think Florida State will pull out this victory.
You know, I think due to unfortunate circumstances, Florida State has had an extended period of time to practice for this game, though, so which means their new quarterback, I believe they're going with Blackman as their starting quarterback. I don't know if it's been officially announced, but that would just be our guess. He's had a lot of time to practice with this first team, almost 2 weeks or so, which should be plenty of time to get him up to speed, and obviously they have enough confidence in him. So I'm going to pick Florida State.
I think Florida State wins this one easily, actually. TCU at Oklahoma State.
This is a very interesting matchup because I think TCU, just like Brady said, could be a sleeper, and I've liked what I've seen from them so far. But I can't pick against Rudolph and Washington. There's no way I go against the Cowboys in this one. And it's in Stillwater. I got to go with OK State.
Two high-powered Big 12 teams. However, I don't think TCU's defense is going to be able to hold up with Mason Rudolph and those elite receivers, especially James Washington. I have the Cowboys taking this game.
Yes, I was very high on TCU, but I'm going to have to get off my high a little bit here and go with Oklahoma State in this game.
TCU is much better than we thought. I remember at the beginning of the year when Brady said he picked TCU as a sleeper team, we all kind of laughed at him. They're a good team, but Oklahoma State's better because they have Mason Rudolph and James Washington as a dynamic duo. Alabama at Vanderbilt.
Alabama on the road, blowout.
Game's not even going to be close. Like Josh just said, Alabama takes this one by 3 touchdowns.
Ditto.
Guys, this is going to be a close game. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Vanderbilt, they had a great win this past weekend. I don't know if you're paying attention to it. I think they knocked off Kansas State, who was ranked about 18th or so. So I think they have mad potential. I think this game, especially being at Vanderbilt, is within 10. However, I am going to go with the Crimson Tide on this one. Toledo at Miami.
Same thing as Florida State. I'm going to go Miami at home. They've had a little bit of rest, like we said, for unfortunate reasons, but I can't pick against the Hurricanes in this one. Close game, but I think the Hurricanes take it.
It's been a very small sample size for Miami so far this season, but you guys watch. This team is a sleeper in the ACC. I think they're very, very talented, and they've yet to show it just because of the amount of games they've played, and I think they get this win.
You know, kind of like TCU, I had Toledo as one of my big teams to watch out for in the beginning of the year, but I can't pull myself together to pick this Toledo team, so I'm going to have to go with Miami, but I think it'll be much closer than a lot of people think.
Toledo is undefeated. They have looked good. Miami has only played one game. However, they are the U. They are, supposed to be a very good team this year. I'm not going to be shocked if Toledo goes in there and gets the win. However, like I said, being at home, it is the U. I am going to go with Miami on this one. Michigan and Purdue.
Purdue, I think, is a very improved team, and but me personally, I think Brady can attest to this more. I'm not sure how much of a home field advantage Purdue's going to have in this game, in which case I think I'm going to go with the stout Michigan defense, as I mentioned before. And you know what? I think their offense, as conservative as it is going to be able to get a win. Close game. I'm saying 27-21 Michigan.
Josh touched on it earlier. Michigan is not a team that's going to blow people out because their offense isn't as powerful as a lot of these other Big Ten teams. And I think this game's going to be close. I think it's going to be within 10 points, but I have the Wolverines.
You know, Josh, Purdue doesn't have a very good home field advantage yet. And I say that because Jeff Brahms, in his first season coaching here, came over from Western Kentucky. And so far, he's leading this Boilermaker team to a 2-1 record. Their first winning record in 9 years. The past 4 seasons, Purdue has won nine total games. And thus far, they've won 2, and they're 2-1. And they beat down on a Mizzou team that usually is pretty good. They started off 1-2 this year. But to start off Big Ten play with Michigan at home in West Lafayette, I think it's going to be very tough for Purdue to move anywhere on this one. Yes, Jeff Brahm's a great coach, but I think Michigan easily takes this game.
Purdue almost got the win against Louisville in Week 1, and they looked very good. Easy win against Ohio in Week 2, and Missouri, we touched upon this, granted it was the first week, but we thought Missouri was going to be a little sleeper team, especially with that quarterback Lockwood, his name was, and they just went in there and they won 35-3. Michigan's offense, I feel, is not good at all. So I feel this is going to be a game of whoever gets to 17 first wins the game. And I'm going with Purdue in this one because I think they get it done. They get their statement victory that they've been waiting for, and it finally happens. Like I said, it's going to be a defensive game, but Purdue gets it done. Mississippi State and Georgia.
Again, this is another game that I don't think a lot of people were circling on their calendars until yesterday. I think Georgia takes it at home, but I think it's going to be a close game.
Very close game. Nick Fitzgerald's obviously proved himself, but between the dynamic running back duo they have between Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, along with that high-powered defense, I see Georgia taking this one.
I'm going to go with an away team for this one. I think this is the second away team I picked because I did have Michigan. I'm going to say Mississippi State will go into Athens and get a surprise win at this Georgia team with, like you said, Lyle, arguably one of the best running back duos in all of college football right now, with Nick Chubb leading the way there. But I think that Mississippi State has a good chance of coming in and getting an upset victory.
I was very high on Mississippi State yesterday morning going into the day, and I'm going to remain high on them. I think they go to Athens and get this win. Florida and Kentucky.
Again, I think this game, despite the ending, was a very boring game. When we saw the scoring from this Florida-Tennessee game, all of the scoring was exciting, as scoring should be, but it was interesting the way it happened. I think that they were able to hold who might be one of the most underrated backs in the country in John Kelly, who might be a sleeper for the Heisman at this point. We didn't get to touch on that this week, but there's my hot take for you. I think Florida's defense is what gets it done on the road against the Wildcats.
You know what? As crazy as that game was, the Florida-Tennessee game, Florida, plain and simple, didn't deserve to win that game. They got outplayed by Tennessee. And you look at Kentucky, they're 3-0. I'm going to take Kentucky in an upset in this game.
I can't pick Kentucky in football. The only thing I could pick Kentucky in would be basketball, and I rarely do that either. I'm going to go with Florida on the road. Simple as that.
Florida did not look good in that Tennessee game. Lyle touched up on it. I mean, that game, you kind of wish you could have handed both teams an L by the way they performed because it was an ugly game. But I do like Kentucky. They are undefeated, and they are at home. Notre Dame at Michigan State.
This game is in East Lansing. Michigan State is starting to get back on the right track, and this train's going to be derailed this week. Notre Dame's going to go into East Lansing and get a big win.
See, Michigan State's 2-0. I'd like to say Notre Dame's going to blow them out of the water. And these East Lansing games are always really, really competitive. I'm going to take Notre Dame, but I think it's going to be a very, very good game and very close.
I'm going to have to agree with the two of you for what seems like the 1,000th time this season. Maybe that's why the race for the Pick Ems isn't further apart. But I'm going to say Notre Dame in this game. They're going to go into East Lansing. The Spartans really haven't had a lot of success the past season, and I don't think it's going to carry over to start this one.
I think Michigan State is definitely better than we give them credit for, and compared to last season. But Notre Dame is literally a field goal away from being undefeated and being ranked probably in the top 20. So they're a very good team. I'm going to have to go with the Fighting Irish on this one, but Michigan State, like I said, definitely do not sleep on them. Washington at Colorado.
Washington's a good team. Like I said earlier, there's no reason they shouldn't be in the top 10, but also I don't think there's a game that's really keeping them in the top 10. You know, they haven't had anything that's been convincing yet. On the other side, this is a Colorado team that is not the same as last year. I think they're a decent team. They will compete in the Pac-12, but they can't compete with USC and Michigan, USC and Washington. You know, there was a ton in there. And you know what? I don't even know if they can compete with Stanford, so I think they lose at home to Washington.
Like you said, very different team for Colorado this year with Steven Montez at quarterback, who's solid, but he's not Cephalufau. This will be interesting for UW because this really is the first tough game they're going to have to play after playing three of the worst teams in all of FPS to start the year. But I still think when it's all said and done, the Huskies get a win.
Yeah, I think Jake Browning and the quarterbacking of Washington's too good to go against this team. Like you said, Lyle, a second ago, Cephalufau, not here this year, obviously. In the NFL, unfortunately had an injury, was cut by the Buccaneers in the very end of training camp. But I think Washington comes into this one, and they're going to torch the secondary of Colorado.
Colorado's definitely better than I thought they'd be. I thought coming into the year they would be a 3 or 4 win team, and they're already 3-0. But you know, UW is UW. I think UW gets the win, but I think Colorado might put up a fight because Washington has not impressed me as much as they should have, especially playing these so-called FBS teams. All right, now this should be a very, very fun one. UCLA at Stanford.
Stanford's going to be coming off of a loss to a team, like I said earlier, I think a very good San Diego State Aztec football team. I also think Stanford's a good team. This game is in the Bay Area. Stanford's at home, coming off of a loss. I don't see a way that Stanford loses this game. You know, I don't think Josh Rosen, we've been through this before, but also I don't think he has a whole lot of help. I don't think he's the best quarterback in the conference, and to be totally honest, I don't think it's even close. There are 3 guys in the Pac-12 I'd put above him. But you know what? UCLA loses this game, and it's not going to be on Josh Rosen. I think Stanford absolutely obliterates the UCLA offensive line, and Rosen gets sacked at least 6 times.
See, Josh and I usually don't disagree on many games, but for whatever reason, my guts tell me this is a game that's going to favor Josh Rosen. Stanford's offense is not great. Their defense is solid, but I think with the passing ability that Rosen has, the way he's shown himself over these first couple weeks, I think he takes down Stanford.
I'm agreeing with you on this one, Lyle, because I think this is that bounce-back game for UCLA. We saw last week Rosen really had limited targets. His favorite one, it seemed to be just Austin Roberts, his big tight end / oversized slot receiver. And so I think Josh Rosen bounces back in this week. UCLA will come out victorious, but I think it'll be a very ugly, sloppy game. Josh, you said 6 sacks. That's detrimental to this team if that happens.
I think I was shocked at the way that USC's offensive line dominated Stanford's defensive line. And UCLA, to put it simply, has an awful offensive line, and I think that's one of the reasons why Josh Rosen throws a lot of interceptions. Is one, because he's not the smartest quarterback in the conference, but also because he can't maneuver out of the pocket and throw the ball, which is obviously it looks bad on him, but not as bad as it looks on his offensive line. I think his offensive line really struggles this week.
As we mentioned earlier, coming into the year, Stanford was getting playoff hype to finish top 4, especially Pac-12 favorites. So I don't think there's any way that they can lose 3 games in a row. But yet somehow, I think they actually might, because Josh Rosen, like I said, we'll have this debate on and on and on. Memphis is a good team. It's their 3rd year in a row beating the top 25 team, so it wasn't no slouch that they were playing. Stanford has just not impressed me. That game against USC, we touched upon this last week, that was one of the most dominant USC games we've ever seen. Stanford did not look like they were ready to play. And against San Diego State, I only watched the 4th quarter, so I don't know what the first 3 looked like, but in the 4th quarter, San Diego State once again looked like the dominant team. So this game, I think Brady touched up on it perfectly. I think it's going to be ugly, but I think UCLA comes out with this win. Now it is time really quickly, guys, for the worst of the worst, the absolute worst game of the week, the one game that you cannot even pay any of us to go to or watch on TV, and that is South Alabama at Idaho.
Now, here's the thing about this one. Idaho, I think, has some of the best home field advantage in the country. They've got a stadium that holds about 9,000 people, and there will probably be 700 or 800 there. Okay, it'll probably be a couple thousand there. But this place is going to be absolutely rocking. However, we all know that the state of Alabama is just absolutely flooded by jaguars. I mean, that you can't walk to a train station without getting attacked by a jaguar. In which case, I think that the state of Alabama is going to transport all of their jaguars to the state of Idaho so that the state becomes interesting, and South Alabama goes in and sticks it to the potatoes. Those jaguars are going to be feasting on mashed potatoes and gravy this weekend.
Oh, man. As always, like I do every week for these games, a lot of high, intense preparation. Oh, man. Wow, tough game. You know what? Mark Schlereth went to Idaho. I'm a fan of his. I like him on ESPN and on NFL.
No, I have to change it there.
Oh, he's on Fox now. I'm sorry.
Now. He called a game this past Sunday on TV, his first one on TV.
You're right, he did.
Not so fast, my friend.
Idaho, for that sole reason.
You know, you brought up the point that Stink, Mark Schlereth is also known as Stink, went to Idaho, and I'm a big Mark Schlereth fan as well, so you know what? I'm going to have to go with the Vandals in this one. Josh, I'm a big fan of mashed potatoes, but I don't think those Jaguars can handle that altitude up there in Idaho.
I was going to go with Idaho as well because I love potatoes so much and the fact that it is the potato state. But just to make this worst of the worst pick 'em interesting, I'm going to go with South Alabama with this one. Now, guys, I mean, this can be a worst of the worst game as well for one team, the other team not so much, and that is Oregon at Arizona State. We get to see Heisman hopeful Justin Herbert this week leading the number 24 Oregon Ducks into Tempe for a nice early 7 o'clock matchup between the Sun Devils, guys. I think I know where this is going, but who takes this?
All right, Oregon and Arizona State. ASU was getting beat pretty badly by Texas Tech this week, and they figured out a way to get back in the game. Let's be honest, their defense might be one of the worst in the country. And that also goes for Texas Tech. However, I don't think Oregon's defense is that much better. This week, despite the loss, ASU finally had the offensive resurgence that they needed to have. I think Oregon wins. I think Oregon wins 54-48. This is going to be a close game, and it's going to be a shootout. I would not be surprised if Oregon jumps out to like a 21, 28-point lead and ASU comes back, but falls just short again.
Josh tries to be as positive as he can when it comes to Arizona State football. I'm sorry, I'm not as high on them as he is. 50-48, a 2-point game against Oregon, with the way that Arizona State's defense has played against some very low-quality teams, in my opinion, to open up Pac-12 play now against a guy who's been very, very efficient for Oregon in Justin Herbert. I'm sorry, Oregon wins this in a blowout, and to be completely honest, I've said it to you guys, I don't see ASU winning another game this season.
Josh, I don't know if you know or recognize this, but what Justin Herbert did to Nebraska secondary is illegal in most states. It was bad. But imagine what he's going to do to this ASU secondary. So Justin Herbert is going to tear them apart. But on the contrary, the ASU running game is something special and has been changed over the past couple of weeks. I think with Demario Richard back in the lineup for ASU as running back, along with Kalen Ballage, I think it's going to be one of those games that people will go in expecting the worst, but they're going to get more positive results from this team. I don't think ASU will win. I think Oregon will, but I think it'll be much better than everyone thinks.
I have one sound effect to perfectly describe what this game is going to be. It's going to be an absolute shootout, guys. Now, I have no confidence in this team. I think we have maybe a 1% chance to win. I think Justin Herbert's going to come in and he's going to throw for at least 6 or 7 touchdowns. I'm going to be completely honest. We've seen what he's done the last few weeks, and now he has to face ASU secondary, which, as we saw, I'm surprised they only allowed 52 to Texas Tech. Granted, their quarterback had 400 yards and 6 touchdowns. I thought that was weak. As Lyle mentioned, I don't think they win another game. I think their best chances with either Oregon State or Arizona. Even then, that's going to be a stretch. But guys, I hate to say it, I think Oregon wins, and I think big. I think even bigger than what Josh's score was.
I will tell you this, though, guys. And looking at the stats right now, ESPN has Oregon having an 81% chance of winning. But I will tell you this. Justin Herbert has thrown almost 100 less yards, 2 less touchdowns, and 2 more interceptions than Manny Wilkins this season.
Doesn't change the fact that Oregon has half a defense.
Good point. But Manny Wilkins,
Maybe.
7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Herbert's thrown 2 interceptions, only 5 TDs.
See, now the huge difference in what Brady's saying right now is Oregon's undefeated, and we're not.
But here's another thing you have to keep in mind. With ASU's front 7 at full strength, which we don't know if they are because Karan Crump got hurt, and Karan Crump was one of the nation leaders in sacks. So, and a stat that not a whole lot of people know, by the way. But finally, I'll finish off my thoughts on the game with this. The reason why this game will be close is because Justin Herbert's a great athlete. But when I think of the quarterback matchup in this game, we have the athlete Manny Wilkins, and we have the quarterback Justin Herbert. Now, Manny Wilkins might be one of the best quarterbacks in the country at getting out of the pocket and keeping a play alive. Blake, hold on. You said Josh Rosen has a top 5 IQ. You can wait. Manny Wilkins is one of the best in the country at keeping a play alive. Now, does that mean he gets the ball away once he gets out of the pocket? No, it means he gets sacked anyway. But he gets out of the pocket and keeps plays alive. If he had the passing ability of Sam Darnold, he'd be a different quarterback, honestly. That's why I think this game is closer than some people think, because I think ASU will be able to shut down the Oregon run game, and I think that ASU will be able to rush on Justin Herbert enough, but not enough to get the win. I'm not saying ASU is going to win. I'm saying this is going to be a better game than people think.
Well, if you're interested in owning some Harris Highlights merch, today is your lucky day. Pick up your own Don't Sleep on Chattanooga's Zane for Heisman and official Harris Highlights merchandise today. The link is in the bio below. Well, that does wrap up this edition of the Harris Highlights Show. Now, guys, we always touch upon college game day and whatnot. This week it is in New York City, which I have no idea why. I think we're still all trying to figure out why, but if you're in the New York City area, make a sign, show up, and make sure you send us photos. We will love to see that. After this episode ends, make sure you head over to SeatGeek.com and get $20 off your first purchase by entering promo code Harris Highlights. Now, guys, if you want a great deal, go to the Arizona State-Oregon game, because according to ESPN, they have tickets available from $21, which means if you enter the promo code, your ticket will only cost you $1. Now, I don't think there's anything better than watching Arizona State get embarrassed at home and have it only cost $1. That is fantastic.
For us, it's free.
Well, I mean, it's $40,000, but hey.
Use the code Harris Highlights and tickets are only $1. It's practically free too, Josh.
Alrighty, and once again, we'll be giving away a Pro Football Focus subscription. So to win, make sure you go over, hit me up on Twitter, and let me know why you want to win. For Lyle Goldstein, Josh Schaefer, and Brady Klein, I am Blake Harris, and we will see you all next week. Enjoy some college football, everyone.